Welcome to the Shatter Point. I'm your host, Forrest Windu. And today I'll be trying to get through this real quick. It's just a quick live. It's my first one. Actually, I tried a couple other times, didn't work so good, but I think I'm getting the hang of this now. So, um, the what I'd like to talk about today is Ice Cube's contract with Black America. Yesterday I was on a panel, the Roger Report Live. Thank you, brother. Shout out to you. Uh, and the Black Uru Strikes recommended that everyone read it. So I wouldn't have read it anyway, but I thought it would be a good idea to make this into my first live stream. So if you go to contractwithblackamerica.us, all one word, you should be able to pull this up on your phone. You should be able to pull it up on your computer without a problem. Um, and it's divided into 14 sections, including the introduction. I'm actually going to read the 13 sections. I'm not going to read the introduction because I think that we all have a good barometer of actually the climate that we're in right now and some of the historical woes that we face as Black people, so-called Black people in this country. So I think it's I'll just skip the introduction and I'll just go straight to section one. And this they're not very long, so as long as you can bear with me reading like like I'm in third grade, then at any rate, section one, which is representation. It is a bill to guarantee Black opportunity and representation. It says to adopt the plan of neo-reconstruction to redress past wrongs systemically imposed on Black Americans economically throughout many generations that has resulted in a wealth gap where the average white family is 10 times the wealth of a Black family. In addition to some of the economic initiatives listed below, also formally apologize to Black Americans for past discrimination and slavery. Additionally, Black opportunity and representation will include affirmative action in schools, public and private, per student funding in states on an equal basis instead of paid by local property taxes. Black representation on all government civil rights bodies, civil rights classes mandatory in elementary schools, gerrymandering reform, additional polling places in Black minority neighborhoods, Black and minority neighborhoods, I beg your pardon, and Juneteenth to become a federal holiday. Section 2, bank lending reform. Bank lending will be regulated to require banks to lend a percentage of all loan and credit categories on equal basis to the Black population each bank serves. However, the minimum threshold must yearly meet the percentage equal to the national Black population, currently approximately 13.4%. Rates on Black loans federally and from banks to be the same average rates as whites. Uh, so we're going for is equal services from the banks and credit institutions. Section 3, federal funding of baby bonds. Pass federal programs providing every child with a government-funded trust account at birth, starting with a $1,000 contribution. As proposed by Senator Booker and Representative Presley, accounts will be managed by the Treasury, and only those born into lower wealth families would receive more contributions each year, up to $46,500 total. At age 18, access to the funds allowed, but use restricted to asset enhancing actions such as buying homes, starting businesses, and funding funding education. I beg your pardon, funding education. Where I got that from. That's an interesting concept. I think it's kind of the build in for reparations, if you will. I think it's conservative, but I get the heart, the intention of it. Section 4, Federal Reserve and government pensions. For qualified Black Americans, Federal Reserve to allow a one-time interest-free loan for home ownership. The Fed to ensure banks and institutions it oversees comply with bank lending reform. Fed to adopt modern monetary theory with a goal of full employment and avoidance of actual inflation. Federal and state pension funds control over $1 trillion. They must allocate 13.4% of their investments into Black-owned enterprises and businesses. Venture capital and private equity funds that take money public entities must invest 13.4% of their total funds in black-owned businesses. That creates a form of parity, and I get that with regard to getting us on level with the general population. So that makes a lot of sense. It's a proportionate number. 13.4% is what our population is in the country currently, so it makes sense that we have representation accordingly, particularly since the laws that we've enacted over the years have not been effective in limiting discrimination and the problems without oversight or proper oversight. Section 5, finance oversight. A banking commission or even a cabinet or sub-cabinet post will be set up to overlook and report on Black and minority lending, housing ownership and mortgages, and enforcement of items 2 and 3 above. Such authority will also oversee and audit federal programs such as Economic Opportunity Zones and Community Reinvestment Act, which is the CRA, to determine who is benefiting from disbursements of such funds. Will provide for a transparent reporting mechanism for abuses to economic programs designed to benefit communities in need. I am familiar with the minority and women-owned business enterprises in different cities and states. And let me tell you, there needs to be some oversight. The problem that we are facing with regard to this particular issue is who is actually classified as a quote unquote minority or underserved business or underserved community and or minority business enterprise. So we have to watch the language when we start going into these areas. I love the fact that Ice Cube did maintain and rightly so that we're trying to make sure we are focused on Black people and not just minorities or people of color, which is important because that is a very important distinction. Section 6, personal data and credit. Most states publicly release bulk data about arrestees unchecked. Like the 1970 Fair Credit Reporting Act regarding credit data, there must be guidelines regarding arrest records that allow similar privacy and accuracy protections and the right to dispute and correct inaccurate data. Credit services will be reformed to mandate consideration of individual consumer data on rent, utility, cell phone, and other like bill payments. That's good. That widens that gives us a greater access to credit and how it is actually used. Next, Section 7, prison reform. Privately run prisons will be abolished. Prison labor disallowed without consent, and nonviolent offenders incarcerated for 10 years or longer will be freed if good behavior standards are met. All prisoners for marijuana possession, freed. First offense for illegal drug use or possession to require government payment for entry into an approved drug rehabilitation program rather than imprisonment. Once any prisoner completes sentence, voting rights are restored. I think this is extremely fair. I mean, obviously it needs a few tweaks here and there, but I think it's a good step in to deal with, because one of the main tools of racism, white supremacy to keep the Black man particularly marginalized in this culture is the school to prison pipeline and the prison industrial complex. I don't know that this is actually going to see fruition. I don't know that privately run prisons being abolished. I don't know that that's actually going to be able to happen, but I think it's important to put what your intentions are in the contract. So this is really good. Section 7, judicial reform. Judicial reforms eliminate mandatory minimums and 3 strikes laws. The Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice reformed through stricter guidelines and greater oversight over police departments. The Department of Justice can be sued for noncompliance, lynching to become a federal hate crime, and the Ku Klux Klan declared a terrorist organization. There should not even be a debate about the lynching becoming a federal hate crime. I don't understand why it's not. Certainly the Ku Klux Klan could easily be declared a terrorist organization with its history. Going back really quick to prison reform, I thought was really interesting. About the 10 years when people, non-violent offenders incarcerated for 10 years or longer will be free if good behavior standards, and that absolutely makes sense. I don't even understand why a person would be in prison for more than 10 years on a nonviolent um, charge or conviction, rather. Um, Particularly with the things that Black Americans tend to be arrested for. I'm not talking about like Bernie Madoff or anything like that, although I have my apprehensions about his sentence as well. But I know he ruined a lot of lives. So, but I do think that we need to keep a close eye on the prison reform issue and the judicial reform issue. I think that's one of the biggest battle cries, particularly given the time with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and all the things that are going on in 2020 so far. Um, Police Reform Act. Um, Police reform will be implemented in an expansive act that will, at minimum, include elimination of qualified immunity. That's where you can't be held accountable for your for acting in the line of duty, so to speak. Requirement of mandatory malpractice insurance for police officers, making municipalities liable for unconstitutional actions by police. Mandatory use of dashboard and body cams. Elimination of chokeholds and no-knock warrants. Establishment of residency requirements, de-escalation training, and requirements to update training. Severe penalties for evidence tampering, including withholding DNA. A federal database of police and disciplinary records established and made public, and once fired for cause cannot be rehired. I think that's very important because many times what happens with police officers, they just move and they'll get another job within a different department, whether it be in the state or out of state, or and it just kind of, it's a slap on the wrist, really. Particularly when they violate someone's rights by either harassment and or killing them, which is, yeah. Creation of Office of Independent Prosecutors to solely focus on prosecuting police accused of wrongdoing. Who polices the police? I think that's a very wise thing to put in. Other reforms is listed in greater detail in the Contract with Black America. Section 10, FCC licensing of public airwaves. Access, again, people, access. Broadcast networks will be required to air black produced content equal to 20% of the total content on the network as measured by time. I think that's a great step. I mean, in this space, we talk about integration and admixture just as a fact. So this would actually give greater access to that process over time. Section 11. Confederate monuments and institutions. Elimination of all Confederate statues and uses or displays of Confederate flags on government grounds or property with public access. Rename all streets, schools, public structures, etc., named after Confederate soldiers or leaders. A memorial will be built in Washington, D.C. to victims of police excessive force. It's a great ask. It's so entrenched in this country. I don't know how that's going to come about, but I think it's a good ask. Next, AJP program for education and jobs. Adoption of AJP and a public-private program that provides access to jobs and education and or training for people willing to put in the work and commitment. Absolutely, could always use more support with regard to trades and vocations and professions. Section 13, as I'm moving forward, is the last section. The Black responsibility, which I thought was really interesting because whenever you have a contract, there's more than one party. Otherwise, it's I forget, but I'm just want to read this out. The Black responsibility. Chronic poverty creates an atmosphere full of negativity, frustration, hopelessness, depression, alcoholism, drug abuse, crime, and violence. These are some of the conditions that plague the Black community, which is dealing with extreme generational poverty. As we begin to gain social and economic equality, it is our duty to clean up ourselves and our community. This contract is a two-way street. As we gain social and economic equality, we must begin to dissolve any bitterness in our hearts for past wrongs. We must become better citizens who are more productive on all levels of American society. We really must step up after we pass the contract with Black America, with no more excuses left in the kitty. Our entertainers should be persuaded to deliver more positive content that leads our youth to make better life choices in life. A new pride must develop with these new opportunities, and we must fight against negativity, frustration, hopelessness, depression, alcoholism, drug abuse, crime, and violence. I think this is a great summary of what his intent was, and this is the offer. The offer is leave us the hell alone and let us build. Give us the access and equality so we can we get our families back together, communities back together, and hopefully all contribute to a better America. I think that's wise. I think it's reasonable, and I think it is fair. But again, if you want to review the contract of Black America, it is all of contractofblackamerica.us, all one word. It was on. I found it on Ice Cube's website. So this concludes my first actual official live stream for the Shatterpoint. I'm Forrest Windu. I'm your host. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, see you in these YouTube streets, and may the force be with you.